So it's 1 minute past 4, so let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Richard Spidhoven. Some people will maybe still joining in the webinar, but because we have a full agenda for today, I suggest we start with talking about the new Oracle Java licensing and support rules. And we're trying to aim to, in today's session, to decode the complexity and to educate, equip, and enable you with all the licensing rules and definitions that you should be aware of if we're talking about Oracle Java. The agenda that we've prepared for today is that we're first going to have a quick look back in what happened in the past. Then we're going to look into what Oracle nowadays calls Java Standard Edition and what are all the ins and outs with regards to Java Standard Edition. Then we're going to zoom into the different commercial features from Java that Oracle has made available over the last couple of years. The support announcements that Oracle have been making over the last period of time, and where there is a lot of noise in the market around what is changing with regards to Oracle Java and its support. And then we're going to close off with a conclusion and a Q&A session. During this webinar, you are all muted, but if you have any questions, then you're more than happily invited to raise your question in the Q&A box of the webinar. And then at the end of the presentation, we will address the different questions that have been raised and provide you the answers so that everybody can get the most out of this session during today. If we start with the historical overview, then it is important to, first of all, understand, if we're talking about Java, what is Java and where is it actually fitting into the whole Oracle portfolio. Now, of course, the majority of the people do know that Java is one of the most popular programming languages in which a lot of different applications have been developed over the last couple of years. And the principle that is applicable for Java is that it is designed to decrease the implementation dependencies under the slogan, write runs, run anywhere. That's why Java has become a rather powerful programming language, which a lot of end user and solution providers have actually been using in order to develop their solution. And Java actually became part of Oracle's portfolio after they acquired Sun Microsystems, because Sun Microsystems was the original developer of Java. And when they developed Java in 1995, they released it under a proprietary software license, which means that in that moment in time, Java was still a commercial license for which you actually needed to obtain a license from Sun Microsystems. But then later on, Sun Microsystems in 2007 actually relicensed its Java programming under the so-called general public license. In other words, as of that moment in time, Java became a free software license under the open source model, meaning that it was becoming open source and open to the public, with the requirement, obviously, that in case you would use Java, that you would, if you would develop something, bring it back to the open source community, because that's the principle of open source licensing. Now, in 2010, Oracle actually acquired Sun Microsystems. And as of that moment in time, Java became part of Oracle's portfolio. And as part of the acquisition from Sun Microsystems by Oracle, Oracle actually had to make a promise that they would continue to make Java continuously freely available under the open source model that Sun Microsystems actually implemented in 2007. That was one of the requirements that the European Commission and the other institutions that had to say something about the acquisition of Sun Microsystems by Oracle that they put in as a requirement. And as such, Oracle started to continue to deliver or make the Java programs available under the so-called Oracle Binary Code License Agreement. That is a license agreement that is specified online and actually still provides you the right to make use of Java in an open source fashion. But Oracle is, of course, Oracle, and also started to introduce or develop other so-called commercial features from Java, which they started to make available in a separately licensable product, being the Java SE Advanced and the Java SE Suite. Those were the two new software licenses that Oracle made commercially available that includes a number of specific Java features that in case you were using it, you would actually need to obtain a license for it. And as of 2014, Oracle also introduced another flavor of that same Java license, but that was for the desktop deployments, whereas the initial Java SE Advanced and Java SE Suite licenses were particularly focused on the server deployments. So apart from the Java Standard Edition, which is the free version that Oracle continues to make available as of 2010 since the acquisition of Sun Microsystems, governed under the so-called Oracle Binary Code License Agreement, as of 2011, Oracle started to also create commercial Java licenses, being Java SE Advanced, Java SE Suite, and then in 2014, the desktop version being Java SE Advanced Desktop. Now, therefore, it's also very important to understand, if we're talking about Java, what is actually part of Java Standard Edition, which is still the free open source version of Java, and what is not part of Java Standard Edition. Because if we're talking about Java Standard Edition, then that specific product includes a number of features and components. Like almost any Oracle license is always a suite of components of products that you are entitled to make use of. The Java Standard Edition, if Oracle talks about it, includes the JDK, so the Java Development Kit, including the JavaFX Software Development Kit, the SDK, the Java Runtime Environment for the server and regular packages, the JavaFX Runtime, and JRocket JDK. So it is important, especially for the technical people, that in case we're talking about Java Standard Edition, to understand what specific features and components are actually part of Java Standard Edition. And those four that you see here on the screen are the ones that are actually part of Java Standard Edition. Now, are you allowed to make use of Java Standard Edition free of charge? Yes and no. And that's, of course, always the tricky thing with Oracle licensing, and to understand when it is allowed to be used for free and when not. Because if we're talking about Java Standard Edition, then the way you make use of Java Standard Edition determines if you actually need to obtain a specific license for it. And why is that? That is because the Oracle Binary Code License Agreement that I was talking about before specifies very clearly that in case you're using Java Standard Edition for so-called general purpose computing, think about, for example, the use of Java Standard Edition components on your desktops and laptops to open up a web application on the internet, then such use is still free of charge from a licensing perspective. But if you're using it in non-general purpose computing devices, then you are subject for additional license fees to be paid towards Oracle. Now, what does that mean? Let's have a look in a bit more detail. Like I said, the general purpose computing usage is free of charge as long as you're using it for general purpose computers. So think about your personal desktops, notebooks, laptops, smartphones. If you're using Java on those, let's say, common used devices where you need Java to open up, for example, a web application, then such use is free of charge and doesn't require a specific license. But if you are, for example, a solution provider that embeds the Java Standard Edition programs that we've just seen before in a very specific application, think, for example, about Blu-ray disc device, think about an MRI scanner that a company like Philips Healthcare would develop for hospitals, in which they embed Java into their MRI scanners and then deliver that specific solution or specific device towards an end user. And such a solution provider obviously gets money for the development and distribution of such specific solution towards an end user. Then obviously Oracle would want to see royalties being paid for the use of Java as embedded into such a specific device. So especially solution providers that actually do embed Java into a specific device, like the examples you see here on the screen, a telephone, think for example about an Apple phone, a handheld device, a Blu-ray disc device, or an MRI scanner. Any device in which the software is embedded requires the solution provider that actually develops that solution to have a so-called distribution agreement with Oracle, which allows them to distribute Java as part of a solution towards an end user. And for the right to have that distribution right, the solution provider actually needs to pay royalties towards Oracle in order to be allowed to embed Java into such a specific device. So it's really important, apart from understanding what is part of Java Standard Edition, is to understand on what specific devices am I using it, and is it part of an embedded device that I may have gotten from another third party, and does that third party actually has an embedded distribution agreement with Oracle, which allows them to actually embed Java into the solution that you bought. Now, apart from this standard edition, free to be used version of Java for general purpose computing, there are also a number of commercial features developed by Oracle. And those commercial features are in principle required to be licensed. Because if you look in that specific Oracle binary code license agreement that I was referring to, you are entitled to make use of those programs, but only for the fact that you can use them for non-production purposes. Because if you look in the details of that specific binary code license agreement and you look at the specific features, you do see that there are a number of commercial features like Java Flight Recorder, Java Mission Control, Java Advanced Management Console, MSI Enterprise GRE Installer, JRocket Flight Recorder, JRocket Mission Control, and GRE Usage Tracking or JRocket Real-Time. Those are the features that Oracle developed on top of the components that are part of the Java Standard Edition. And those components, if you're using them, do in principle require licensing. So it's always very important for end users to have a clear view, if you're talking about, are you using Java, what specific components are you actually talking about? Are you talking about any of those commercial features? Or are you talking about any of the components that are part of the Java Standard Edition? If the answer is we're using one of the commercial features that are listed over here, then in principle, you do require a license for such usage. Now, the most common commercial features that we do see being used in a lot of end user organizations are, for example, the MSI Enterprise GRE Installer. Let me just explain to you a bit what kind of situations you may come across in your internal organization as well. Because the MSI Enterprise GRE Installer is a feature of the Java commercial features that a lot of end users use in order to distribute the GRE, so the Java runtime environment, through, for example, SCCM on a central point to all their desktops and laptops. Now, the moment that you're using the MSI Enterprise GRE Installer in order to ease the distribution of the Java runtime environment to all your desktops and laptops, you're actually using an MSI Enterprise GRE Installer feature that is a commercial feature and as such required to be licensed. Or we see a lot of end users that are using the GRE usage tracking to determine or to measure the usage of the Java runtime environments within their estate, and therefore don't realize themselves that in case they want to keep track of that usage, that specific feature is a commercial feature which is required to be licensed. Now, in order to understand what specific commercial features are part of what specific license, you will see that here listed in the screen. So you see that almost all the commercial features, apart from JRocket Real-Time Deterministic GC, are part of both the different licensing models that are there. Only if you're using this feature, then it at all times requires you to license the more expensive Java SE suite. If you're using any of the other commercial features, then typically the Java SE Advanced or the Java SE Advanced desktop licenses are the licenses that you would need to have. Now, how do you determine if you need to have a desktop license or a Java SE Advanced license? That depends on the specific device on which the Java commercial feature is being deployed. Because if you're deploying it only on your desktops, then obviously you would go for the Java SE Advanced desktop license. Would you deploy it on your servers as well? Then it would mean that you would need to obtain a Java SE Advanced license. So this is the overview to show you what specific features are part of what different commercial Java licenses there are available. And like I said, if you're using any of those commercial features, then in principle, you're required to license those features. Now, why do I say in principle? Because you are not allowed to use them for commercial or production purposes, but you are allowed to use those commercial features for non-production purposes. So for example, you're a solution provider, and as a solution provider, you want to make use of those commercial features to develop a specific application, then for the use of the development activities, you do not require a separate license. However, the moment that you start bringing that specific commercial feature, part of a solution that you start distributing towards end users for commercial or production purposes, then such use of those commercial features do require a separate license. Because here's what it stated, what I just said. The internally used for development license grant section of the Oracle Binary Code License Agreement allows you to use the software for the purpose of designing, developing, and testing your programs. So as long as you're using the commercial features for designing, developing, and testing a specific application that you may develop, you do not need to license those commercial features. If you're using any of those commercial features for commercial or production purposes, then at that moment in time, you actually need to license such usage. So to take a step back, you first need to look at Java Standard Edition versus Java commercial features. What specific products and components am I actually using? And does it fall under the Java Standard Edition license, which is free of charge as long as you're using it for general purpose computing? Or are you using any of the commercial features from Java, which in principle does require a license? And again, I say in principle, because if you're using it for designing, developing, and testing your programs, then you do not need to have a license for those commercial features. Are you using it for production or commercial use? Then the use of these commercial features actually do require you to have a separate license from Oracle. Now, apart from the fact that you then need to have a separate license for Oracle, what a lot of end users do find very complex is that, what does that then mean? What license do I need to have from Oracle in order to cover that usage? Because apart from the Java Standard Edition and Standard Edition Advanced Desktop licenses and the Java Standard Edition Suite licenses that Oracle has made available, there are a lot of other Oracle licenses that actually does come included with the right to make use of a specific Java feature or component. Because as it is for almost any Oracle license, an Oracle license is always a suite of products and components that you're entitled to make use of. It never is just one single product or specific component that you're entitled to make use of. And because of this way of bundling different features and components as part of a license, you at all times need to have a clear view of what specific products and components are part of the different Oracle licenses that you have obtained, and to determine if there are any full use or restricted use rights granted into such a license. Now, what does that mean? For example, if you look at the different Oracle licenses, and this is just a subset of many different Oracle licenses that you may have, you do see that a lot of the Oracle licenses that you may have purchased from Oracle, like for example, WebLogic Server Standard Edition, Enterprise Edition, or WebLogic Suite, the WebLogic family from Oracle, does include on itself, respectively for the WebLogic Server Standard Edition, the right to make use of Java Standard Edition. The WebLogic Server Enterprise Edition includes the right to make use of the components that are part of Java SE Advanced. However, it is restricted to be used in conjunction with the WebLogic Server only. So what does that mean? For example, if I'm using Java Flight Recorder, which is a commercial feature, and that commercial feature is part of Java SE Advanced, if I do use Java Flight Recorder on a server where WebLogic is being deployed as well, and I do have a WebLogic Server Enterprise Edition for that specific server, then that usage of the commercial feature Java Flight Recorder is governed by the WebLogic Server Enterprise Edition license. Now, you see here on the screen, and we will share the slide deck as well afterwards to all the attendees, so you have this table as a reference. But you do see that a lot of different Oracle licenses actually do include different rights to make use of either Java Standard Edition, Java Standard Edition Advanced, or Java Standard Edition Suite, with either full use or restricted use rights. So it's not a simple thing to just look at your deployment, look in your SAM tool, see what is being deployed, and then say, yeah, I do have an issue for Java, yes or no. It does require detailed, in-depth knowledge to assess and reconcile all the data of your infrastructure and to determine if specific licenses that you may already have are already covering the specific deployments of specific Java commercial features or Java standard edition. Now, why is it also important to understand in what specific license Java standard edition may be part already? That is because of the fact that if you have a license, for example, for WebLogic Server standard edition, then that license, if you pay support, also includes the right to make use of Java standard edition. And as such, in case you need to have support for Java, you are already paying for the support for WebLogic Server Standard Edition, and as such entitled to make use of the latest security patches and updates for Java as part of your WebLogic Server license. So, in short, if you have a need to assess what specific Java products and components you're deploying, and if there is an issue from a licensing or a support perspective, it is really important to look into the specific products and components that are part of your Oracle licenses, but also to look into the products and components that are part of other application server products. Like, for example, we do know that SAP NetWeaver, which is of course an application server from SAP, also includes the right to make use of Java Standard Edition. IBM WebSphere is another application server that already includes the right to make use of Java as well. So having a clear view of all the products and components that are part of your license, and I would recommend to start with Oracle and then later on see if there is a need to look into the components and products that are part of your other vendors' application server licenses like SAP NetWeaver and IBM WebSphere, is important to understand what am I actually entitled to make use of, and do I actually already have the right from a license and from a support perspective to make use of specific Java features and components, and does that also provide me the right to make use of specific security patches and updates because of the support that I'm paying on those licenses. Now, why am I emphasizing the fact that it is important to look into the licenses but also into the support? And that is because of the fact that Oracle announced their support roadmap a couple of months ago, where there are a number of changes announced. Because in general, what you need to keep in mind is that Java SE remains to be free, but Oracle has announced that for Java Release 8, they are going to make a number of changes. And the major change that is being announced, and why a lot of people are looking into this, also supported by the fact that a lot of Oracle people are knocking on end users their doors, is that the public updates for Java Release 8 are no longer going to be available as of January of next year, so within a month from now. Oracle announced that into their so-called Java SE release cadence and OpenJDK announcements, where the references to those announcements are in this presentation, and therefore also, like I said, available for you after this call when we distribute the presentation, so that you can review it yourself as well from an Oracle documentation perspective. But what does that mean with regards to the fact that Oracle has announced from a support perspective a number of changes? Well, first of all, it is important to understand that Oracle makes a differentiation between three types of users for which the impact may or may not be applicable. They classify the different type of Java users into Oracle customers, commercial users, and personal users. And an Oracle customer is defined by Oracle as a customer, an end user, that has an active subscription for either Java Standard Edition or Java Standard Edition Desktop, or you have a support contract for the on-prem licenses, because Oracle has, next to its on-prem licenses that they sold in the past, the subscription model that they're announcing and pushing everywhere in the market, or you are having a Java SE support entitlement to be used as part of another Oracle product. So, for example, you have Oracle WebLogic licenses. Oracle WebLogic includes the right to make use of Java Standard Edition, and therefore you are considered an Oracle customer from a Java SE roadmap perspective. Now, apart from the categorization Oracle customers, Oracle has a different group classified, and that's what they call commercial users. Now, commercial users, it's a bit of a strange term for a lot of people, but what it actually means is actually the independent solution providers or solution developers that are developing a specific application or a specific solution and embedding Java Standard Edition as part of their solution towards an end user. And then the third category are what Oracle classifies as the personal users, And those are the individuals that are using Java on their personal desktops or laptops to develop for a hobby or, for example, for educational purposes like universities, where people want to get used to how Java works and what it is about. So any customer that has an Oracle license that includes Java, or a customer that already has a Java on-premise licenses, or a customer that already has a Java SE subscription, is considered to be an Oracle customer. A commercial user is simply set a solution provider that embeds Java into a solution and distributes that to a third party. And a personal user can be you and me that as a hobby may be doing some programming for Java in our spare time. Now, that classification is important, and I will just go first of all to this one because of this announcement that Oracle made. Like I said, they have announced that as of January of this year, or next year, for release version 8, there are no public updates going to be made available anymore. For personal users, that's going to be extended until December 2020. But for commercial users, so an Oracle customer, so to say, that is only going to be made available until January 2019. Now, what does that mean? That means in practice that if you are an end user and you're making use of Java Standard Edition or Java commercial features, that Oracle for release version 8 will no longer provide public updates, meaning security patches and updates, towards end users if you are not an existing customer from Oracle. So if I'm using Java and I'm not having an Oracle WebLogic license or an Oracle Java subscription or an Oracle Java license, and therefore I'm not entitled to make use of Java also from a support perspective, then at that moment in time, you may have an issue if you do have a requirement to have the latest security patches and updates available from Oracle for Java Standard Edition Release 8. If you are an Oracle customer, it is to be seen if you do have an issue because of the fact that you may have the right already to have the latest security patches and updates as part of your Oracle licenses in there. So from a support perspective, the biggest announcement that has been made is that Oracle will no longer provide those public updates. But it is to be seen for an end user if that really has an impact on your business or not. Because from a compliance perspective, that is not the discussion. The compliance discussion is related to the commercial features that we just talked about. But from a security perspective, if you do not have the right to make use of security patches and updates because of an existing Oracle license, because of the fact that you're not an Oracle customer, like Oracle classifies it, then you may have an issue from a security perspective. And therefore, we really recommend end users that do not have an entitled to make use of Java and therefore also do not have the right to make use of the latest supported versions to assess, especially with your Chief Information Security Officer, to see if there's a specific need within your end user organization to make use of public updates, security patches after January 2019. Because if you are in that situation, then that may mean that you need to enter into a subscription contract with Oracle in order to be eligible to make use of those latest security patches and updates. Now, apart from this announcement from Oracle with regards to the fact that they're no longer going to provide public updates, there is also, because of this change in Oracle side, an announcement made with regards to the fact that Oracle will continue to provide new releases of Java on a 6-month basis, but that they also will make sure that as of version Standard Edition Release 9, that they will continue to provide Oracle JDK for free under the BCL, the Binary Code License Agreement. Meaning that a lot of end users, because of this change within Oracle's support roadmap, are actually considering 3 things. 1, do I need to have a support contract with Oracle in order to continue to have the right to make use of the security patches and updates? Or should I go to the so-called Open JDK, which is actually built upon the Oracle JDK, meaning that I'm going back to an open source flavor as we had in the past as well when Java was still Java and an open source version. What we do see in the market is that this is the consideration that a lot of end users are making right now. Do I need to have support on my Java Release 8? Do I have an option to move to OpenJDK, which is a open source version? Knowing that, of course, in case you do then have an issue, you are depending on the community and not so much that you can go back towards Oracle if you do not have a support contract with them in place. So it's a game changer, and which is actually resulting a lot for a lot of end users to really think about what is my strategy going to be with regards to Java going forward. Now, in order to show you how Oracle actually has its support roadmap, you may all be familiar with the fact that as part of the support contracts that you sign up with, Oracle has a so-called lifetime support policy. And if you look into that lifetime support policy, you do see the specific dates on which the previous support expires. Now, how does that work? The moment that Oracle makes a product available, in this case, let's look at an example, Java Release version 8, then that was available since March 2014. That was the general availability date. And the date on which Oracle made that available, which they committed themselves that for the next 8 years, until March 2020, that specific version remains to be part of Premier support. And afterwards, in March 22 till March 2025, Oracle is able to offer you a so-called extended support contract. Now, this is still in place. So again, if you do have an Oracle WebLogic license, for example, that includes the right to make use of Java Standard Edition, and you've been paying support for that, then your Premier support for your WebLogic license gives you the right to make use of security patches and updates for Java Release version 8 until March 2022. So no issues there. But you do see as well that as a result of the change that Oracle has announced, that they also for newer versions have made specific long-term support releases available. So the dates on which support ends for the newer versions to come, or that have been recently been released, like version 9, 10, 11, and 12, you do see that different dates should be taken into account from a support perspective. That's one of the other reasons why customers are looking into right now, what should be my strategy? Should I stay on Oracle JDK and have a support contract? Or should I move to OpenJDK, to the open source version, knowing what's going to happen with regards to the support roadmap for the newer versions that are coming up? So if we look at the whole situation as a recap, it is really important to summarize that you first have a clear view, if we're talking about Java, what specific Java products and components are we talking about? Are we talking about GRE, JDK, or SDK as part of Java Standard Edition? Or are we talking about any of the commercial features like JRocket, MSI Enterprise Installer, and the Java usage tracking feature, which are all classified as commercial features? If we are talking about Java Standard Edition, the differentiation needs to be made between, am I using it for general purpose computing, or is it being used as part of a device that I'm selling towards end users? The latter requires you to pay royalties towards Oracle. If we're talking about commercial features, it is important to understand, am I using it for testing and developing purposes for your own application, or am I using it for production purposes? And if you're using it for production purposes, the question is, are you having an entitlement, like an Oracle WebLogic license, that already provides you the right to make use of those commercial features? If the answer is yes, you probably do not have a license issue. If the answer is no, you probably do have a license issue and would need to enter into a separate license from Oracle, being Java SE Advanced, Java SE Advanced Desktop, or the Java SE Suite. Then from a support perspective, the reality is that the majority of the end users are using Java Release 8. The first question you need to ask yourself, if it's only standard edition products for general purpose computing, am I having a requirement to have security patches and updates available after January next year? If so, do I already have a license from Oracle that provides me the right to make use of those security patches and updates after January 2019? Because you may be an Oracle customer that has an Oracle WebLogic license, or an IBM WebSphere license, or an SAP NetWeaver license that already provides you the right to make use of those latest security patches and updates? If the answer is no, and you do have a requirement to make use of those security patches and updates afterwards, then you most likely would need to enter into a Java subscription with Oracle. And the Java subscription model from Oracle actually entails two different models. It is a processor-based model and a named user plus model, where the processor-based model is used for the server-based deployments, and the named user plus licensing model is used for the desktops and laptops-based models. And in case there is a desire to have more insights in terms of what the pricing is for those different models, then feel free to reach out to us and we can definitely provide you that insight. For those customers that actually need to have a processor-based licensing model, you need to keep in mind that all the licensing rules and definitions that Oracle applies, including the ones on how to count the number of licenses on VMware, should be taken into account. And for those that are familiar with how those counting rules work for Oracle and VMware, that then typically go through the roof, and therefore is typically an option, if there is a real desire to have such an agreement in place, to go to a custom-made non-standard contract with Oracle in a similar format as what Oracle has in its ULAs, an unlimited license agreement. So, the overall conclusion, apart from the summary that I just gave, is that it is important that you are aware and that certain Java programs are required to be licensed separately, and that there are other Java programs, like the Java Standard Edition programs, that can be used free of charge. And you need to make sure that you have that clear, because there is a lot of noise in the market. There's a lot of people that are saying all kinds of things that are also not true. There are also a lot of Oracle people that are knocking on customers' doors saying, hey, as of January, you need to have a contract with us for Java because otherwise you have an issue. That's all not true. The devil is, of course, as it always is with Oracle licensing, in the detail. But you should not underestimate the importance of having access to the proper license management knowledge and to apply it in a correct way. Because we see a lot of customers just signing up with Oracle because they don't know, and then just think, well, let's just sign a contract and then the problem is gone. Typically paying too much than what they actually would need to pay. Or they're ignoring the issue and then, by not applying the right knowledge, are being surprised during the course of an audit that they are found to be non-compliant. There's also a lot of noise around Oracle doing audits on Java. The reality is that Oracle does not have a Java audit program at this stage. They do include Java as part of their standard audits, and we see them once in a while as a result of a middleware audit popping up. But I do know for a fact that Oracle is actually setting up a compliance audit program for Java. So it's a matter of not if you're going to be audited, but when you're going to be audited. And it's always recommended to better have a clear picture first before those kind of issues are popping up during an audit itself. Now, how do we then help our customers through our partners, like, for example, Appreciator in the Nordics, operating a lot in Sweden, but we also have other partners in Israel, like Emerset, or other partners in Canada, like Destech. The way we work is that we have developed a so-called Java health check or compliance check, which is a local service to understand the risk and impact for your specific situation, because every situation is different because of the level of detail that is applicable. So what do we do in our Java compliance health check? We assess for you your specific licenses and incorporate or understand what specific rights are included into your Oracle licenses. So what specific Java rights are in there? How many do you have there? How can you deploy them? So that's one part of the assessment. And then the other part of the assessment is that we assess based upon your inventory toolings like the Snows, the Flexeras, the iQuates, the SSCMs, or whatever inventory tools you may have in place in your organization. We assess what specific Java installers and as such, what specific Java components are deployed in your estate. And based upon that, we assess the risks that you are having, both from a license and from a support perspective, to quantify the risk, if there is a risk, and to determine if there is a necessity and an added value to do a full compliance run in case we do see a lot of issues coming out of there. Now, from that health check, We then do a optimization project in which we go way more deeper. That's then a second approach step that we can take, in which we understand the full compliance position and the risks that you have, and support you with the remediation and optimization that you may be needed in order to be completely clean and prepared for an audit. So there's a lot of noise. We actually took that opportunity to really step into it with a low-cost service to help end users that are not doing this every day like we do, to understand what risk is there and what is the impact for my personal organization. So that's what I prepared for today's session. I on purposely kept it roughly till 45 minutes, which I actually achieved, because I know that there are typically a lot of questions that are coming up during this session. So I will use this session to answer the different questions that I have seen in the Q&A, and I will just go through them one by one. So I'll start with the question from Petra Alberts. Hi Petra, hope you're doing well. The question from Petra is, maybe I'm too early, but what are the terms and conditions for Java SE Advanced for the server side? I think you do refer to the specific licensing rules and definitions, Petra. For the server side, it's a processor-based model, as it is for database and for middleware products as well. And that means that from a licensing perspective, named users means you need to count all the individuals that are authorized to use the software. From a processor-based perspective, it means that you need to count all the physical cores of all the physical servers on which the program is deployed, including the rules that needs to be taken into account for VMware, and that then determines the number of processors that you would need to have. I do have your email address, so I will send you a separate note with that as well, and also the specific pricing details that are associated with it, so that you have those details clear. If you then have any further questions on that, feel free to reach out to me, and then we can take that offline. Other question is from Scott Bickley. The question is, how will customers of third-party applications that incorporate an embedded Java license be provided support for updates? Will vendors force their customers to pay for their own licensing? Now, what you quite often see is that third-party application providers that have been developing their applications in the past actually have chosen, under the Java Standard Edition Oracle Binary Code License Agreement, to let the end user itself accept the terms and conditions of the Oracle Binary Code License Agreement. So with other words, they do not take the responsibility themselves, but put the responsibility towards the end user. So in case a third-party application vendor has embedded Java into its solution and actually has chosen to let the end user accept the Java Oracle Binary Code License Agreement itself, then it means that the end user, in this case you, are required to have support for patches and updates. That is the standard practice. I mean, if I would need to say a rule of thumb, 90% of the application vendors that I've seen typically choose for that option to put the responsibility towards the end user. Now, if you have that covered with your application vendor, that they are responsible for it, it means that the application vendor actually needs to have an agreement with Oracle to provide you the right to use support patches and updates. Now, since the fact that in the past a lot of application vendors have been pushing that responsibility already towards the end users, I do expect that vendors will continue to push that going forward towards the end user, because they would not want to have any financial liability as a result of it. Another follow-up question from Scott is, how can Oracle customers effectively audit their Java usage to understand where usage is associated with Oracle bundled products, third-party embedded licenses, or something else entirely? Now, Oracle does have scripts, like for example, their middleware scripts, that does pick up what specific Java components are, for example, running and on what specific servers. So those middleware scripts would be used in order to determine if on a specific server a WebLogic server is being deployed. And if they would see that, for example, a Java flight recorder or mission control is being used in there, they will assess as part of what specific WebLogic licenses you have, if there is the right to make use of those commercial features, yes or no. So Oracle already does have scripts available that picks up those commercial features and takes into account the other products that are being deployed in there as well. That middleware script that I'm referring to is part of what they call the LMS collection tool. And based upon that data, they can assess if a specific product is actually part of a bundled product or not. If we're talking about embedded licenses for third-party providers, Oracle would typically start auditing the solution provider instead of the end user. Because if a third party embeds Java into a solution and they see, like for example, Philips Healthcare as an example, that they distribute their MRI scanners with Java, then they wouldn't go to the hospitals, but they would go to Philips in my example in order to knock on their door to get the royalties being paid for the distribution of Java. Another follow-up question from Scott is, will Oracle remove access to public updates or continue to push automatic Java SE updates? The concern is with Oracle, will Oracle allow the download of the updates even though they are now under a commercial support subscription? So Oracle will not make them publicly available, so you can't download them just from the java.com website, for example, but they will continue to make them available as part of their support provisioning. Now, of course, the responsibility for making sure that you're using the security patches and updates only on those environments where you are actually allowed to do so lays on the end user itself. So although they may not be longer publicly available on java.com, it is rather easy to have those security patches and updates available through Oracle support, but you are responsible for making sure that you're applying them on the right systems where you're entitled to do so. Then another question from Maria. What is the difference between Oracle customers and commercial users? Don't Oracle customers use Java for commercial purposes also? Yeah, that's a quite often a question because it's really confusing how Oracle defines it. An Oracle customer is an end user that has a license from Oracle for either Java in an on-premise model or Java through a subscription model, or an Oracle license like WebLogic that includes the right to make use of Java. A commercial user, as defined by Oracle, is a third-party solution provider that develops an application and embeds Java into such a solution. So that is the difference between an Oracle customer and a commercial user. Then we have another question from Anubhav Gupta. I'm assuming here that even if I'm entitled to get security patches for Java because of entitlements for a few products, I would still not be eligible to use Java updates on all my servers where I don't have Oracle products with Java dependency. That is a correct statement, Anubhav. So you need to make sure that that is properly managed. Other question from Fawad Shabani. What impact does this have through a commercial perspective if you decide to not update Java SE 8 and continue to utilize version 8? Do you still need to procure licenses for Java? No. If you are not going to make use of any security patches and updates that are going to made available after January 2018, so you only make use of the public updates, and you decide to continue to use, let's say, the last public version that has been made available for release 8, you do not need to procure a license for Java as long as you're using Java standard edition components like JDK, SDK, GRE. If you are using commercial features of Java, then you do require, in principle, a license for such use. Then there is a question from Daniel Engdahl. Are the Windows offline installers considered to be part of the MSI Enterprise GRE installer? I'm not completely sure, Daniel, and I'm also not completely sure if I do understand your question fully. So may I suggest you to drop me an email or to Flory, from who you will receive the presentation, and then we will follow up on your question separately. To clarify that one. Then another question from an anonymous attendee. What if I have rights to Java Standard Edition under a WebLogic license? Does that only provide me license rights for the server that WebLogic is running upon for all use cases? Yes, that's correct. You have the right to make use of Java Standard Edition, including the right for security patches, only for that specific environment that is licensed with the WebLogic license. Then there is a question from Jan Freeberg. How is bring your own device covered in the license? Are they to be viewed as personal use or commercial? They should be reviewed as commercial, because bring your own device is typically a model that you would use for an end user organization. Personal use is really you and me that have a hobby that are sitting upstairs in our evenings playing around with Java, or for educational institutes where students needs to get used to Java. So it's not something to be seen as personal use if we're talking about end user organizations. Then there is a question from Brian Mercier. Oracle told us that if we are a business and using GRE, even in development and test, we will have to pay for support for every install. Is that your understanding? That depends if you are going to apply security patches and updates on all your installations. What you typically see is that there may be specific use cases for which you have a specific application where you do require the latest security patches and updates that Oracle is going to make available after January 2018. And then you can definitely only license or have an agreement, a subscription agreement for support only for those environments based upon the number of processors that you need. Of course, Oracle tries to sell you to have it for your whole environment, but that is absolutely not true statement. You can have that for the specific environments for where you need that. But of course, you need to make sure that you manage it, because the likelihood that you're going to use it on more environments is pretty high, or higher, let me say it like that. So you must be able at all times to prove that you're not using it on all your infrastructure, but only to the limited set of environments that you actually need. Then there is another question from an anonymous attendee. Will Oracle still sell the licenses under the Oracle Technology price list for perpetual maintenance licenses model as it's still on the price list? Although it is still on the global technology price list, we do know that it is under so-called controlled availability, which means that today you can still ask Oracle for a quote, but Oracle can refuse you to provide you the on-premise perpetual license. And what I've been told from people that I've still talked to within Oracle is that as of January, it will no longer be present on the Oracle Technology price list anymore, and only the subscription pricing will be available. So as such, although it is still on the technology price list, it is under controlled availability. Oracle will probably, in certain cases, make an exception to still sell the licenses on a perpetual license perspective. But as of January, I've been told that it will no longer be available, and only the subscription model will be available going forward. So yeah, most likely if you ask for a quote right now, they will only provide you the subscription model, and only in exceptional cases, they will still provide you a perpetual licensing model as they've done in the past. Then there is another question from Ajay Mida. How Java licensing will impact the cloud providers where the infra is shared by multiple customers? Who will be responsible for Java licensing, service provider or the customer? That is a very good question. You do see that certain cloud providers try to get rid of Java completely. Think about Amazon. But of course, there are a lot of other cloud providers that are still using Java. In essence, it depends per service provider. If a service provider does have a specific agreement with Oracle, which would allow them to have so-called generic hosting for multiple end users. In all honesty, I haven't seen any service provider yet that has such an agreement. And therefore, all the cases that I've seen so far, the responsibility lays at the end user itself. Now, even if the infrastructure is shared by multiple customers, that then still means or requires to determine what specific cloud provider we're talking about. Because, for example, if we're talking about Amazon or Azure, there every end user has a specific instance with a number of virtual CPUs, and that number of virtual CPUs then determines how many licenses the end user would need to have for Java for that specific environment. Because Oracle has different ways of counting the number of licenses if we're talking about public cloud providers like Amazon and Azure. And that is actually the follow-up question that you had afterwards there as well. The deployments of Java on Amazon or Azure are, from a licensing perspective, not different than the deployments of any other Oracle product, meaning that the number of virtual CPUs in Amazon or Azure determines how many licenses you would need to have. If hyperthreading is enabled, then 2 virtual CPUs counts as 1 Oracle processor. If hyperthreading is not enabled, then 1 virtual CPU counts as 1 processor. So the licensing policies are exactly the same as for Java as it is for any other Oracle product. I think that was the last question that I had here on the list. So that is perfectly on time in terms of keeping it everything to keep everything on time. Like I said, this session has been recorded. So after the call, my colleague Flory will reach out to you and provide you a copy of the presentation and a copy of the recording. For those that do have any further follow-up questions, or for those that it was not completely clear where the question was about, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to address your specific questions and to see how we can help you. Flory will make sure that all the questions that you have will be distributed towards us. And like I said, there is a lot of noise in the market. There is a serious risk that needs to be assessed, but typically it is a bit more nuanced than the stories that you hear in the market. Feel free to reach out to ourselves or to one of our partners across the globe to determine if a Java health check would be anything for you that could support you. Like I said, we have partners across the globe, Destech in Canada, Appreciator in Sweden and the Nordics, Emerset in Israel and the US, and many others. So feel free to reach out to us, and we can definitely help you to bring you into contact with either ourselves or our partners to see if a Java health check would be a good fit for your specific needs. So thank you all for joining. I hope you found it an interesting session. Happy to hear your feedback if you didn't like it as well in an email. And I would like to wish you a fantastic remainder of the day and talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.